So, welcome to a little talk on Chakra Yoga with a greater focus on the Ekadasi breathing technique, the Pranayama side of it. Many people on the island are aware that there's breath work, different kinds of breath work happening. And the breath is a very powerful tool to be moving energy through the nervous system. It moves energy through the brain cells as well, and when we bring in deeper breathing and a lot of it, it moves what's called the prana through the nervous system. This is a kind of energy, same thing as electricity, it's electrons essentially, while your body is getting a supercharge of oxygen. So there's two aspects to pranayama. The energetic prana, why it's called pranayama, is because it has to do with prana. The secondary aspect is the oxygen going into the bloodstream supplying everything in your body with the needed oxygen and getting rid of the carbon dioxide that all the cells are producing all the time. So all of this is part of pranayama yoga. So pranayama yoga is the whole science of how to breathe, and then it follows up with many different breathing techniques, of which I was taught about 60 at the ashram where I studied, and it took 6 months to learn these and practice these techniques. It's a long-term kind of a reconditioning of the body, the mind, the emotions, and it's, I think, the most valuable part. As far as yoga in the West, there's a lot of postures, a focus on postures, and oftentimes it's not connected to the breath, so we have a lack of oxygen while we're doing movement and postures, and you lose a lot of the benefits. Every cell in your body requires oxygen on a continual basis. If the cell is working hard as a muscle cell, it demands the oxygen and will take it from the bloodstream. When you're thinking a lot and working on mental things, your brain cells will be taking the oxygen, producing carbon dioxide. This is the natural process. We have 50 trillion cells in our body on average. So we need 50 trillion atoms and molecules of oxygen getting to those cells to keep them alive, to keep them functioning. And when there's a group of cells somewhere in a gland or an organ that are not getting enough oxygen, it becomes dysfunctional. The cells can't work without the fuel, and the primary fuel is the oxygen. So all of this has to do with the prana, the oxygen, and pranayama yoga. That's 1 out of 9 forms of yoga. I'm going to briefly go over the other forms of yoga because many people don't even know what they are. And then we'll come back to pranayama and the purpose of the technique we're doing next week, the Ekadasi. It's a retreat. It takes 2 weeks, let's say. First, learning how to breathe, and then 11 days of a specific technique that gets progressively longer every day. And then we cap it off with a different breathing technique that mellows things out. All of this is the beginning phase of yoga. And most people don't even know about this. Many people don't even know how to breathe correctly. So we go through this whole process during the Ekadasi retreat. How to breathe, when to breathe, how to do it so that it's effectively bringing the prana through your whole nervous system, through the brain cells. As we do this, we'll be throwing in some movements and postures to keep circulation going, to keep the rest of your body healthy. It's not just a mental technique, although it is a psychological detoxification technique. And as we do that, we may bring in some physiological techniques to detoxify your body, doing different kinds of fasts or cleanse with diet and fruit, such things. So a brief overview of Chakra Yoga, which contains all of these forms, including pranayama. We have in our physical body Muladhara chakra, number 1. Second chakra is Swadhisthana. Third one is Manipura. Fourth one is Anahata, Vishuddha, and Ajna. Out of the body we have the 7th chakra, and then out in the universe. And when you leave your body, you'll find out about these other places. But while we're in the body, we work with these 6 chakras. The 7th chakra is consciousness, the part that is going into the body and having all the experiences of seeing, feeling, touching, smelling, all of these things. So I teach a lot from a scientific perspective. So the science, in the scientific explanation, these are the energies, the forces. Chakras are called energy wheels, okay? It's a vortex of energy. And each of these, if we look at it scientifically, have specific powers and functions, and we can trace them and find them. They are being rediscovered in Western science. This one is called gravity. We all know what that is. It's the element of the 1st chakra. It pulls things together. The element of the 2nd chakra is called covalence in science, and it's also an energy that pulls things together. And it unites atoms and molecules, and it's responsible for a big part of our body chemistry and brain chemistry. The 3rd chakra force is called combustion, and it's the opposite, not quite the opposite, but it destroys the other 2. The other 2 are bringing things together. This is the element of change, combustion. You take a piece of wood, you light it, it changes. It's not wood anymore, it's light and heat and ash and smoke and carbon. So transformation and change is the power of the 3rd chakra. In the 4th chakra, we have repulsion, which is an energy that expands and moves things outward all the time. The whole universe is actually expanding. And every time you breathe, you are expanding, and then you contract and you expand again. So as an energy, it's scientifically called repulsion. It creates the effect of expanding things. And in us, in humans, it makes us reach out, expand beyond ourselves to reach others. The 5th chakra is electromagnetic energy, radiation. The energy we get from the sun, the electromagnetic. We see light, we feel heat. There's a whole range of this energy that we are not aware of. It's invisible to us. So this is radiative electromagnetic energy. When we get to the 6th chakra, it's magnetic energy. The magnetic is the guideline for the electromagnetic wave. It is the matrix of the universe, the grid work that is holding everything in place, containing all the forms and figures. And then the 7th one, as I mentioned, is consciousness of all of these things. So then we have the forms of yoga. 7, consciousness. 8, the material planetary system. And 9 is the stellar, the radiating stars of the universe and the planets. In science, it's the light matter and the dark matter, and they actually balance each other out. So the forms of yoga connected. Pranayama yoga is number 3. It's connected to the Manipura chakra, and this is enhancing, empowering our ability to change, to do, for action. We'll go back down to the 1st chakra. Number 1 is Hatha yoga. If you look around at the world, everybody's doing postures, asanas. All of the styles of yoga, whether it's Iyengar, Vinyasa, all multiple styles of yoga are all really just Hatha yoga. It has to do with the posture, the position, how to move, how to align. The 2nd chakra brings in something very different. It's called Jnana yoga. Jnana means wisdom, and Jnana yoga is the study of how your mind is working so that you learn to understand emotions, thought patterns, what you're thinking, how your thoughts are working. It's self-study. It's a meditative practice, more what I would call contemplation than meditation. You're observing and studying how the mind works. And through that study, you observe how your thoughts and your emotions are actually governing your chemistry, your emotions, your whole body chemistry. So the mind-body connection is a very important part of this study. Pranayama yoga that we're going to focus on today is this whole science of how to breathe, and then comes into many mathematical breathing patterns. Some of you may be familiar. You're breathing in for a count of 4, breathing out for a count of 4. There's mathematics. You're equalizing the breath. Other techniques, you're breathing in for a count of 8, you're holding for 4, you're breathing out for 8, and you're holding for 4. This has a very different effect on your psychology, your psyche, your energetic flow, your prana. So there's 60 different kinds of techniques, and we're going to be using one of them called Ekadasi that involves complete deep breathing and then holding the breath in patterns, retentions, for longer periods of time. Now then, we come to Anahata is another kind of yoga. It's called karma yoga. It involves understanding cause and effect. And through the study that we get in Jnana Yoga, you learn to realize that your actions produce reactions. Everything you do has a result. From the simplicity of throwing a ball up, it's going to come back down. Everything you put out is going to affect the environment around you, the people around you, and you're going to get reflections of that. So karma yoga involves doing nice things, being morally and ethically in a good place where your work and you're helping other people, you're kind and you're compassionate, and you're kind of in service for other people, helping them along their spiritual path. This is karma yoga, often referred to as service. The fifth chakra is Raja Yoga. The Raja Yoga is also a very mental form. It has to do with the developing of concentration. Contemplation goes in there. You have to contemplate what's on your mind enough to regulate your mind, bring it to a peaceful state. Then you can concentrate. And with concentration, we use, these are mandalas, okay? They're visual, geometric symbols that have an impact. Your subconscious mind can read these. Consciously, we can learn that, well, this one has 12 petals and the petals look like leaves. There's a connection to breathing. Breathing connects us to the leaves and the plants around us, symbiotic relationship with nature. All of that is connected to this. You can learn to read these things, and they're in the temples, churches, everywhere around the world. Big stained glass windows with the geometry in it. They're saying something. It's a language. So you'll learn to use this language, and we use also sound. The Shuddha is connected to your voice, to what you're saying, and also to what you're thinking. So the use of sound in the right way, mantra, sound formulas, and then with a visual focus, you're creating a mental impact that can change what's going on in your mind. You can change your mind. And the changeability of your mind, the changeability of your belief system is all around here. When we get to the sixth chakra, we're looking at Yantra Yoga. Yantra means symbolism, it means measurement, it means the whole symbolic side of the sacred geometry. It includes mathematics and geometry, so it's a very intellectual study. And through that you learn how to read these little pictures. And then you can read things in various temples and ancient places of the world, because they left us a lot of things like pyramids and the stained glass windows I mentioned. The geometry gives us the information that the ancient cultures had. And the ancient cultures had a lot of information about human reality, about mind, about energy, and about consciousness. So Yantra Yoga then is this study. It also includes the rhythmic study of how the cycles of these energies are rotating day by day, month by month, and year by year. So there's a calendar system that goes with it. Similar to the Mayan calendar, that's not just numbers, but tells you what kind of a day this is, what energy you have. So Yantra Yoga tells you today you have a lot of energy in the third chakra. Tomorrow it'll be the fourth chakra. So today in the third chakra you have action power to do many things. If it's a 2-cycle day, you're in the second chakra element, which is social, communication, relationships. The fourth chakra brings you back into the healing side, the feeling, the compassion, the love. The healing force is connected to the fourth chakra. Fifth chakra, we're into the mind, the intellect, and communication, of course, the voice. And then the sixth chakra is the magnetic guideline. It's actually governing all of these things. And it's also the connection of left brain, right brain, where you have the intuitive side and the intellectual side. And those two coming together give you a more complete picture of everything that you're experiencing in life. And in our Western education, we've been thrown off into the left brain with intellectual, rational analysis, blah, blah, blah. And intuition is considered irrelevant. And yet it's half of us. So Ajna Chakra brings these two together by studying the intellectual and then opening up the intuitive. And then you get this gut feeling of what's really going on, and the intellectual understands what's going on. They work together very well. So, Hatha Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Pranayama Yoga, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, Yantra Yoga, and the seventh one is Mantra Yoga. It's the use of sound in a harmonic, musical way that creates an elevation of consciousness. And if you've looked around the world, you'll see every culture, every religion uses sound. From Tibetan chanting to Om Namah Shivaya or Praise the Lord, all these sounds are used to elevate your consciousness and maybe get you in touch with something higher, something above, something more divine, all the way to kingdom come. So the correct use of sound formulas, we started working with sound here, and here the sound becomes music, harmonious and elevating. When we get to chakra number 8, it's out in space. Laya Yoga, also called Kundalini Yoga, also Tantra. These are all connected to the energy itself. The energy that is invisible. You don't see this energy, but you can feel it. And it's an energy that we have access to. It's all around us. And the practice brings us into working with this energy, consciousness guiding it to the chakras, through the nervous system, through Ida, Pingala, Shushumna, the different parts of our nervous system, and then charging up our whole energy field with the invisible energy, of which there is no shortage. Then when we get over to the 9th chakra, it's called Bhakti Yoga, and Bhakti means devotion. Bhakti Yoga is more scientific. It's devotion to what? Devotion in India, bhakti is praying to all the deities, going to the temples, burning incense. In yoga, it's coming to this realization, one universe. So the study of quantum physics and the study of all the divine things brings us to the same place. We're all in one universe. And coming to that realization and focusing on that and feeling it within ourselves is a big part of this. The scientific, the yogic aspect is just to realize we are all in one universe together. And then there's the greater part, the unseen, the universe has its own intelligence. And in yoga you study that intelligence. That intelligence, the mind of the universe, is called buddhi, out of which Buddha. Buddha is one who is in touch with the buddhi. It's the mind of the universe, which knows everything, past, present, future. Our limited human minds are connected to our senses and bring us to experience the world. The buddhi brings us to experience the whole universe. And this world is just a little part of it. So you don't take this world so seriously when you realize there is this place beyond. Now, take a deep breath and let it go. We're going to come back into Pranayama Yoga. And if you just notice, you were not breathing very much until I said something. Pranayama. The word yama in connection in this pranayama means the control of the prana, controlling the energy. So that is the importance of it. If you take the energy and stop the energy, everything stops. Your heart will instantly stop beating because it doesn't have the impulse. So it's considered primary. Prana is the first thing. The oxygen then goes to the body and makes the cells come to life and allows you to function in the world. The prana is what begins everything, directs everything. So, how much have you studied about prana? Your nose. What's the purpose of having a nose in the middle of your face? It's for breathing. How many people are not using it and just, especially when you're doing some kind of work, you end up breathing through your mouth. When you breathe through your mouth, you're bypassing the prana side. The part of you that is smelling things, the olfactory system, has two big bulbs of nerve tissue with 50,000 nerve terminals hanging in each nostril. And when the air from the jungle here goes in, this air has extra electrons attached to it. The extra electrons go directly into the nervous system and empower the brain and the nervous system below it. Without that, there's a little bit of a dysfunction. The nervous system is not getting the fuel it needs, even if the body gets the fuel it needs. So, my friend Marcus over here pointed out to a little study that a fellow did and wrote a book on breathing. He also wrote a book on breathing. But in this study, he points out that the guy tried breathing only through his mouth for a month. Was it a month or 21 days?
20 days, yeah.
20 days. And in those 20 days, his health, everything, all his glands and organs became less and less functioning to the point where he was literally dying. The body was shutting down. He had lots of oxygen. He was... So, the importance of prana can be noted. Everybody should know about this study, because so many people are still walking around breathing through their mouth all the time. Bad habit, and you need to change that. So in yoga, the first thing is to recognize the nose is designed for breathing, and we need to use it all the time, full time. Take another deep breath and let it go. Check your posture. See if you're slouched. Now feel if it feels good to take a deep breath. We're in a very enriched environment. The oxygen level is really high. The prana level coming from the jungle is amazing. And you can feel this. I mentioned, check how you were breathing before I say take a deep breath. And you realize you're not breathing very much. The average human being, in studies years ago, I think it's worse now, people are only using 1/10 of their lungs. 10%. Your lungs occupy this whole section of your torso, and we're only using a fraction. We don't think about that. We are not living in a contemplative society. We're just programmed to do, and busy and da-da-da-da. If you contemplate, why am I only using 1/10 of my lungs? And if you are aware of psychological studies, hey, we're only using about 1/10 of our brain. What's the connection? It's a very important connection. In what is called Mahat Yoga Pranayama, complete deep breathing, we learn to fill the abdominal, the midsection, and the upper section in that sequence. And when you start doing that, it's not just the oxygen, the prana flow goes much further and deeper. It starts going through all the brain cells, goes to all the nerve cells everywhere in your body. Everywhere you've got little traumatic instances from banging your hand or an accident or a bad emotional experience or some kind of trauma that happened. All of this influences the prana flow. And when you start breathing deeply, you're going into this place of moving the energy much more deeply. Now the 10% that we're using of our brain and of our lungs suddenly goes to a deeper place. And if you're aware, when you are not consciously breathing, your body breathes anyway, doesn't it? When you're sleeping, you're not paying attention, but your body keeps breathing. Subconscious program built into your system, keeping you alive, keeping you from stopping, keeping the prana flow at a minimal level, keeping enough oxygen to maintain life, not to empower life, just to maintain life. Now when you go in and take control of your breathing, what you're doing is taking control of a subconscious function. Now when you do that, you've stepped into your subconscious. What's in your subconscious is every experience you've ever had from the womb up until now. And when you start moving energy through all the neurons, through all the cells in your body, you're awakening a lot of dormant memories. You know that under hypnosis you can go back to when you were 4 years old and see a whole day of your life, see many things. It's all there. It's all in us. And then there's the whole part that was a negative experience that you don't want to feel, you don't want to think about, so we suppress that. This is what's stored in our subconscious. What we do with the Ekadasi technique is go in there. Go into the basement of your mind and look at what has not been resolved. Whatever traumatic events have happened in your life, being born is traumatic. Being born in a hospital is seriously traumatic. Cesarean is more traumatic. All of these things are registered in our nervous system. We're not consciously thinking about it, but it's all there. And ultimately it starts disturbing body functions. It disturbs the prana flow. And when we don't want to feel something, we don't want to think of something, we have to stop the energy from going to this part of our brain, to that part of our body connected to this part of our brain. In the long term, this creates dysfunction in various glands or organs, and we're all individually different in that way. But overall, the effect is going downhill. So the technique is to bring the energy back up, to go into our subconscious and clear out the stuff that is not useful for us now. It's like a gardener going in and pulling the weeds out of your garden so that the nice plants that you want and the food you want to grow are then growing without interference. The interference that comes from bad traumatic experiences. Let's say you've just had a bad relationship and it was there for a few years. Your memory of that is deeply ingrained because it was there ongoing for years. When you come into your next relationship, your mind remembers the last relationship, and when your new relationship says something along the lines of what you heard in the past, you automatically project, oh, there's a problem here. This is going into a negative place. This is how the mind works. It is always taking the present scene, comparing it to the past, and coming up with a possibility. These are called modifications of the mind in the classic Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. It's all about how the mind works, how the mind is projecting yesterday's problems into today's possibilities. And it doesn't leave you clean and clear to experience what's really happening now. Because you're always anticipating, you're expecting. Ekadasi takes us in to look at these expectations. How is our present behavior affected by what happened to us in the past? How is your conscious perception of the moment colored and maybe twisted by what has happened to you in the past? These are realities that are affecting most people. Take another deep breath. See how you're breathing. I mentioned Mahat Yoga Pranayama, which will be the beginning of the retreat next week. The abdominal breath is the first, and it works with the diaphragm muscle down in here. The diaphragm goes down and up. When it goes down, it pushes all the digestive organs out of the way, so they bulge out. In modern civilization, maybe you're not supposed to have a belly bulging out, so you hold it in. And that's suffocating the bottom part of your lungs, because you need to engage this muscle. There should be a lot of movement here. This pulls the air into the bottom two lobes of your lungs. And at the same time, it's creating a massaging effect on your digestive organs, stomach, pancreas, liver, intestine, colon, etc., all the way down to your sex glands. Midsection breath is a different motion altogether. It's connected to the rib cage, moving outwards, kind of like an accordion. You remember accordion? Going out and in. So you disregard the bottom part. To learn this, you have to take one step at a time and kind of master each step, and then we put it together into the complete breath. So the midsection is just the ribs, out to the side, back in. Try this. It feels actually very good. And it's bringing the prana, the oxygen, right into the lungs and in and around the heart itself. This is extremely beneficial for the heart and will dissipate and fade away heart problems simply by doing this midsection breath. Then we come to the third part. Upper section, sometimes called clavicular breathing. The clavicles are used. A different set of muscles connected to the spine that are lifting the shoulders, lifting the rib cage, lifting everything up. So it looks like this. That's the three parts of the breathing. For a complete breath, we unite them all together, going from one to the other to the other. Like this. The exhalation is done in the same sequence. You exhale the abdomen first, squeezing the air up and out, then the middle, up and out, and then the top collapses. If you look it up on Google, they teach it backwards. But Google doesn't breathe, right? An area of ignorance. So that's the basic breathing technique. Now, what we do with this is go into a pranayama technique that is mathematical. And the mathematics has to do with breathing a number of times and then locking in the breath, breathing another number of times and locking that in. So there's three different ratios. Each time you lock, it's called a kumbhaka, which is another aspect of yoga. Kumbhaka is a retention, and it's not a holding in of the breath, it's a locking in of the breath. So we begin with a complete breath like this, and then lock in, and that's an internal lock called Jalandhara. It's actually the top of the windpipe, glottis and epiglottis lock in, and then you relax the chest and shoulders on top. The air is not coming out. You've locked the windpipe, so the air cannot exhale. When you do that, you're putting a little extra pressure on your lungs, and that pressure is going to force feed a little bit more oxygen into the bloodstream. Also, the air we're breathing is 80% nitrogen. Now when you do these kind of techniques, you're absorbing a little bit of nitrogen and a whole lot of oxygen. In your brain, nitrogen and oxygen unite into what's called nitrous oxide. It's called laughing gas. This creates a chemical reaction in your brain that then changes your brain chemistry and allows your brain to produce slightly different chemistry, which can go into as far as the production of DMT. And that's a kind of a psychedelic substance. It's momentarily produced and released, and then it fades away. Your body dissolves it back into other chemicals, other molecules. Now this process of getting your mind into a higher state of consciousness is part of the releasing of Ekadasi. It's disengaging your thought control and letting everything go. And again, opening that door, conscious to subconscious, so that information flows. When we do this technique, you will probably find that there's a lot of old memories that come back. Things you haven't thought about for 20 years or 30 years, a childhood memory. All of a sudden you're thinking about that and kind of recalling it, maybe in a vivid way. It brings up the forgotten memories. Those that have been suppressed are going to come back up. They're going to blow up, sometimes come up with an emotional reaction that will either make you cry or make you laugh or confuse you momentarily. So during this process, it's a little bit disturbing. So it's a 2-week retreat in which your mind becomes not as sharp and functional as normal, because you're reaching into the past and bringing up a lot of things. Take another breath and let it go. There are 3 parts to the technique. There are 3 parts to our nervous system. We have what's called in Sanskrit Ida, Pingala, and Shushumna. Roughly going with sympathetic, parasympathetic, and central nervous system. Roughly, but not so precisely. The Ida side is the feminine nature, the receptive side of our nervous system, that is feeling, perceiving, bringing in the information. Pingala is the reaction side, where we're doing, we're acting, we're thinking, it's the doing, the action, the masculine side. Both of these are usually, hopefully, working together in cooperation. We feel something, we react appropriately. And then through life's traumatic experiences and bad experiences, we have little blockages that come in. We feel something, and we've had a negative effect from this feeling, so we react in a defensive way or in a negative way that is maybe inappropriate for the present situation. So when we're going to be doing this breathing, it's going to push the energy through Ida, push the energy through Pingala, and then move the energy through Shushumna. So it clears the areas where there are blockages and resistances, forgotten memories and emotions that we don't want to feel. So you're going to feel emotional reactions. Thoughts are going to come up. Dreams might go a little wild and crazy. As we unblock, we go through the chakras. And we're going to do this in a systematic way that is laying out how your mind works with Patanjali's modifications of the mind, with this action-reaction I talked about. You see something, you compare it to what you saw in the past, your mind projects an outcome, you bring up a reaction. All of this is coming up. And you're observing how this happens. In this observation, you can step in and make changes. As you're bringing up things from the past, you look at, why did this happen to me? And then you're looking at, why did it happen in conjunction with a certain person? What's the reaction with that person? Is there a grudge? Can I forgive that person? Do I understand people are acting and behaving according to their own background, their own subconscious, their own childhood traumas? You know that in studies done of criminals who rape and kill, they've done psychological studies with these people. All of them were beat up in their childhoods. They had violent, aggressive childhoods. Later on in life, they become violent, aggressive in their behavior. This is part of human conditioning. It's programming. If you don't change the program, you're going to react according to the program. So Ekadasi is a way of going into our programs and saying, this is not appropriate. Just because my mother used to beat me up doesn't mean I have to beat up my kids. It wasn't a nice experience. I don't want to pass that on. So all of these things. As we go through the chakras, there's a reaction of going to your self-image, first chakra. Me, myself, and I. Your reactions, your physiological reactions, how your body reacts to these things. You look at this, you feel this, and you'll feel even injuries you've had, accidents or whatever. You might have a toothache that comes up. Nothing wrong with the tooth. It's the memory of a toothache you had. Don't have your teeth pulled out during Ekadasi. You'll regret it later. Same thing, you'll have symptoms of a disease you had, of some kind of suffering. You don't react to it in a normal way. You are going into the memory. Your body holds all of these memories. It's in there. You go for surgery, they knock you out, but your nervous system is still there. And the trauma of being cut open and surgery is registered in you. During Ekadasi, some of this, you're going to feel some of these things coming out. Maybe you were sedated and didn't feel anything at the time. Why am I feeling this? You won't know. Because there was not a conscious experience. The same thing, you're going back into your childhood, deeply into even when you were in the womb. What was your mother experiencing? All of the emotional experiences your mother had when she was pregnant are also registered in you. So you're not going to have a conscious memory of that, but you're going to have feelings and emotions that come up connected to what your mother was going through. So it's not something you need to fully understand to resolve it, but you need to accept this feeling, this emotion. And then we breathe through it and we let it go. Every time you let go of your breath, you're letting go. The inhalation is called inspiration. The exhalation is exhaling, letting go. So this comes with every breath you take. And when you're taking deep breaths, you're getting more inspiration and you're letting go of more. This is the reality of breathing. Even without the breathing techniques, breathing deep is something. It has the inspiration, the expiration, in and out, taking in, letting go. When we come to the second chakra, we're going to be flushing out emotional memory that comes with relationships. Anyone here not had a relationship? How are the relationships? The good, the bad, the ugly. We all get our little traumas registered in there. So you're going to remember some of these things. You're going to see how maybe if you're conscious, you're looking at how you react in relationships, defensively, offensively, mellow in the middle, simply being present in the relationship. All of these things come up. As you're doing this, there's a psychological, physiological reaction to all of the fluids in your body, to your kidneys, to your womb, to your bladder, to your whole lymphatic system, all connected to Swadhisthana, the second chakra. And all of your bad relationships and your trauma are going to be affecting that part of your physiology. So it's not just a psychological technique. Yoga is bringing in mind-body medicine. It has been the source of mind-body connection for thousands of years. When you get to the third chakra, we're looking at what happened to your creativity and your empowerment. As a child, were you told to shut up? Were you suppressed? I mean, if you went to school, you were probably told to shut up. Be quiet, take out your books, ABC, 1 + 1. The expression of a child, the free expression, is just suppressed. That suppression is influencing Manipura, your power center, your ability to act, to do, to be spontaneous, has been crushed. And it may take a long time to overcome that, depending on how much crushing. If, on the other hand, you are encouraged and motivated by your parents and your teachers, wow, good job, let's see what else we can do. Whole different story. So depending on your childhood, whatever happened to you, the reactions you have with Ekadasi are going to be different. This to be considered. When you get to Anahata, here we have a level of sadness, grief, bringing in such things as guilt, shame. These things, these emotional things are held within Anahata. And when we're breathing with this patterns of breath and the midsection breath is really moving, we're dislodging some of this stuff. So the old symptoms of feeling guilty about something, about having a certain amount of shame about something, all of this comes up. And you look at it. We're analyzing as we do this. We're writing every day what's coming up for us and seeing, why is this coming up? What happened to make this come up in me? What am I ashamed of? Where does the shame come from? What do I feel guilty about? Is anybody here Catholic? Was? Okay. I mean, talk about guilt, going to confession, all of that stuff. It can be quite damaging, the guilt syndrome. And in Western culture, this idea of the guilt factor and what to feel guilty about, and look at sexuality. If you're brought up as a Catholic, sex is bad. It's evil. So if you have a thought about sex, you need to go to confession. Talk to the priest about it. The complete suppression of a natural tendency, natural desire, and then guilt comes in, and then we feel shame because, well, I had these thoughts, or I looked at this person and I felt attraction, and oh my God, the devil is getting me. So, guilt coming from cultural religions, not just the Catholics. If you go to India and look at the tantric side of, you go to an Indian temple in India, and if they let you in to the center of the temple, what you have is an altar with a yoni and a lingam. Yoni and a lingam is a vagina and a penis. This is what's on the altar. They worship creation. They think creation, creativity. We all came from creativity. We all came out of sex. How can it be bad? So a complete opposite from east to west. But in the West, if you're brought up in Western culture, there's a lot of guilt and shame, which doesn't go away so easily. Even when you're aware of it, it's going to come up in your thoughts. It's going to come up in relations. It's going to come up in various places. So looking at this, looking at where does this come from? What did my teachers say to me? What did they preach in the pulpit at the church or whatever it was? So these are all aspects of things that we look at as we're pulling the weeds out of our garden. And if you don't pull the weeds out of your garden, when you start to reach the ages of 40 and plus, the weeds begin growing considerably. It's a very important process, clearing out past trauma, negative relations. I got as far as the fourth, now the fifth. Here we're dealing with thought, ideas, and belief systems. What is your belief system? What do you believe in? What were you taught to believe in? Believing in God? Believing in medicine? Your belief system may be good for you, may be bad for you. And during Ekadasi, you have a chance to reformat your belief system, choose a new way of believing about life, about the possibilities we have. And we'll talk about all of this and how to reframe, how to replace negative ideas with positive ideas. And if you're following science and looking at real modern science and quantum physics, pointing us to this area where in our mind and in our expectations is where we control the energy that we manifest in our chemistry, in our disease, in our health, and in our life. Then looking at belief systems that come, I'll give you one example, the medical system. So Thailand is the first country to overrule the World Health Organization and say, you guys are screwed. That's a belief system. Do you believe when we get to Anahata, your belief system around your health is here? Guilt and shame are going to destroy it. A negative belief system is going to twist it off to one side. Your body has the ability to create antibodies that will destroy anything. Any bacteria, any virus. You learn to empower this instead of relying on antibiotics, the replacement of our antibodies. Yoga brings us into, let's re-empower this system and be independently healthy. So this looking at your belief system around health, around education, around reality. Yoga brings us into what is reality? And this is what science is trying to figure out. What is reality? Well, it's already been mapped out in yoga. Consciousness, mind, energy, matter. This is how it works. The layout of the chakras explains all the different energies, what they do physiologically, psychologically. So, fifth chakra, clearing out the old belief system, replacing it with modern reality, which is all about energy, the quantum world. The quantum world is the chakra world. Same thing, different terminology. Then we get to the mind level. Do you understand? The mind at level 6 is about understanding. At level 5, it's information, knowledge. Do you understand all of the information you have? Understanding is the key to a balanced mind. When you understand everything that has happened in your life becomes your education. And the traumatic side of what happened becomes the lesson. And you understand human emotions and how we affect each other and how people react according to their reactive patterns that has nothing to do with you. So it's an education in human consciousness and understanding. our human reality. When we unblock all of these things, we re-empower all the glands and organs connected to these energy flows, we become incredibly healthy. We feel inspired, motivated, but we have to let go of the past to take these steps forward. Any questions? End of my spiel.